to the Kenny Veach case. When it comes to the whereabouts of him within the desert area, a lot of people online throughout time has speculated the possibility that he was buried alive out in the desert landscape. The question is where and how exactly. Some people have suggested the Mineshaft, a key location marker, as we saw at the beginning of his own hike video, and a key place which many of us have attended since, those at least who have recorded their hikes. Yet, upon searches being conducted within the Mineshaft, no results yielded any sign that Kenny was down there. No bones, not much suspicion, though a crystal skull was found there, which would be another indicator or marker. The main telling sign was that Kenny's scent ended at the Mineshaft. When Red Rock Search and Rescue, when dogs went on down there to check for the scent, they reached a dead end at the Mineshaft, coming across Kenny's phone nearby. As for the condition of what it was in, that's unknown of. Did he slam it down in a rush? Did he gently place it down? Did it fall out? We'll never know. But will we ever know the true location of Kenny? Well, it will be a lot harder if he is buried somewhere underground. For example, an alternative mineshaft, mine or a cave, some kind of filling. It just so happens that in recent time of 2024, a fellow hiker known as SB Vegas Adventures, when going out there solo, came across supposedly a collapsed mineshaft not far away from the place Kenny started his hike video. Join us today as we look closer at the footage and do a side-by-side comparison to see what state it was in from 2014 to 2024.
He could be anywhere out here. He could be in any one of these bushes or trees. He could be down there. He could even be in that prospect pit up there on the side of the hill, which we're about to find out. All right, coming down from the mine, we are heading down this hill. You can see the agave burn pit down there. There's a primitive campsite down there. We're not gonna be checking either one of them. We're going straight this way, up the hill, doing some climbing. And right here, it looks like there's a prospect pit. It looks like it from what I can see. Previously unmapped and unknown prospect pit. But it's something. It's something. Somebody started digging here. This may very well be a collapsed mine or a dynamite mine. This could be the final resting place of Kenny Veach. He could have went in there and somehow blew up the entrance, sealing himself in there at his own tomb. So is this what happened to Kenny Veach, a mine that nobody knew about?
Who knows? The possibilities are endless. Though, before we go any further analysing the photos, it's also important to reveal the true location with the given coordinates as to where you can locate this supposed mineshaft. How far away is it from Kenny Veach's last known scent? Well, find out right now. What I've done is used a pre-existing project from the past which has key markers and the original hike route loop which Kenny Veach did. Whether he did it again on his final hike or not, that is a mystery. But really, we only need to focus on the 2 to 3 or 4 miles from where the car was parked up to the markers here just before Wild Horse Pass. And you can see how close they are. Now on the right hand side is the mineshaft and where Kenny Veach's phone and some loose coins were found. And this was 22nd of November 2014 when Search and Rescue went out there. Looks can be deceiving because when you look at SB Vegas Adventures video in recent time, credit to him, obviously you have to go up some higher elevation because it's like on a hill. You might not be able to see it as clear, but it does raise further up there. And whilst the distance doesn't seem great, on ground level in real life, it's a lot greater and quite demanding. So you got to go up the hill and then you reach the mineshaft as you see here. Whilst it does look patchy, this is the spot where Kenny Veach was and where his scent ended as well. And when I say where he was, that's assumed because his phone was there, his scent was there, his coins were left behind. But where else would he have gone, right? Now previously, wasn't that long ago, beginning of 2024, you had Jay Chuck that went on down there really early and came across a cache which had a plank of wood which appeared to be pointing east towards the mountains, ravines over that way. And as unrealistic as that is, I think some of it was checked. Nevertheless, more so in recent time, a certain group of individuals did reach out and cleared it up, saying that they were the ones that put it there. It wasn't a marker to point in a direction, it was just a plank of wood to announce what's present, which is to help other fellow hikers, which sounds like a positive. Not everyone's convinced by it, but some progress has been made. You can always look back to see the original response on a previous video of mine. But what we're really here for is to find and locate the spot, as said. So in parallel, you would have seen some of that footage, okay? Just to set the scene. So SB, where he said, oh, I've got to go on down and then go up that hill. The hill being this area here, right? Where he said, oh, I'm just coming down from the mineshaft. He was so far down the hill, looking back up at the mineshaft, then he rotated around, looking over that way, which would be northeast, south, west. That would be facing west. He made reference to the agave burn pit, which you see there. That's that agave burn pit. And then there's some like camp thing nearby, but it's just up there. You know what the most interesting thing is about this area? Is that I have done a previous video roughly where that blue marker was in the past to do with another finding, something to do with J Silverheels. Now I do have a screenshot of it elsewhere with an arrow pointing nearby in regards to what it really is, and we can talk about that a bit later. But for anyone interested, the spot that SB recorded, and you can clearly see there is like a marker and outline, there is some patchy areas. It looks more prominent here than it does when you're actually there in real time, at least in my opinion, because most of it is like the same colour quality, and then here with some bushes, vegetation, and then a lighter colour there, which I guess is the amount of dirt. Taking consideration that this satellite footage is more up to date now than it has ever been, so it's not like you can compare it to back in the past unless you used Google Earth Pro, but then the quality isn't as good. But what we do have is side-by-side footage from Kenny Veach's point of view in 2014. Not his final hike, but his second to last hike video, or at least his only hike video that he uploaded on his channel, let's put it that way. And then SB's in recent time, because if Kenny Veach truly did go up to this area where the coordinates are, that he did manage to make it to the mineshaft over that way, but then decided to descend down to lower ground and then up that hill, in hopes of getting to Pitcher Canyon, which you see over here, highlighted in the orange marker, which works its way down. Can you see where it's highlighted, Pitcher Canyon? And normally most people would go over Wild Horse Pass and then head down that canyon there. But could Kenny Veach have tried taking a shortcut route by skipping some of the area without going over Wild Horse Pass? And if he did, where from there? Unless it was just straight to this spot here. And whether he wanted to explore it and something went wrong, or he went inside and ensured that no one would find him, a collapse was imminent. Is that the right word? Imminent? It was happening in the moment. Taking consideration that Kenny Veach took a firearm with him, so when SB mentions the possibilities of if there was like some kind of dynamite or blew something up to cause the fill-in, well, a gun could trigger it, possibly, right? One thing leads to another. But would you hear a loud boom sound? Yeah, but who can remember and relate back to on that day, at that time, way back then? Probably no one. And the distance, it's been so desolate, I know noise can travel, but only so far. So, you think back to the scent being at the proper mine shaft, which is still visible and has an opening, and whilst maybe some rubble has collected down at the bottom, search has been done inside, no evidence of Kenny being there, but the scent proves that he was, and the phone, that he just decided to go in a different direction to throw people off, to confuse them, but to be still nearby, and at a location where even if you did walk about searching in this area, you wouldn't know Kenny Veach was there because there's no indication of him, because he's underneath. Now, Kenny did say that if he was going to go out into the desert and he was going to end his life, he would make sure he would never be found. But by leaving the phone at the mine shaft just seems a little bit counterproductive. If truly you don't want to be found, then you wouldn't take your phone with you into the desert in the first place if you have no use for it, right? And as well, let's not forget that when it comes to Kenny Veach, And Sharon Pilgrim, the ex-girlfriend, mentioned it herself on YouTube in one of the comment threads, that Kenny did not take his main video camera for recording videos, but his normal camera for taking photos was missing, assumed that Kenny took it with him on his hike. It just so happened that there was a text conversation between his nephew Hunter Veach before going out there, never to be seen again, where Kenny said, "I've got a surprise for you. I'll show you when I get back from the hike." Right? Kind of eye-opening. And at the time, Kenny was saying how in that conversation, "No, nephew, I don't want you to come with me because it's quite dangerous and demanding." Was that just because it really was, or because Kenny had other ideas and he didn't want anyone to witness him do it because it'd be upsetting? There's different ways of looking at it, but at least when it comes to the firearm situation, he's used it in the past on a hike for protection. He could have used it again. Even SB has taken a firearm with him for protection. There's different ways of looking at it. So whilst we have the location, there's no harm in measuring the distance if possible. Let's just see. So from roughly here to up there, it's like 0.22 miles. But just know it's going to take still a fair bit of time to get from point A to point B because of the steepness going down from the mineshaft hill and then going up to the hill where this supposed collapsed mineshaft is, right? Not that you would hope, but practically speaking, or using common sense, you'd be assuming that this supposed collapsed mineshaft wasn't collapsed at the time in order for Kenny to get to it and go inside of it. But was it truly a mine shaft or a mine? When I think back to the Dylan Rounds case, like the desert type terrain, where you had Bald Eagle mountain range and the different mines and shafts, some vertical, some horizontal, they could be filled in different ways, of course. Some entrances completely blocked, so you had to find an alternative way in, the exit part or the entrance part, and it may have been just only one way. So there's different factors to consider, but for the distance, it's not that great. So Kenny Veach could have easily have managed it, and whilst we have seen him completely knackered from his original hike loop, he was doing significantly less this time from the looks of it. And even those that don't believe that Kenny is in the desert and actually went elsewhere, to stage a disappearance, it's so many miles there to the mineshaft, so many miles back. It's still a lot shorter in distance than doing the whole loop hike. So it is possible for Kenny, at least. In terms of total distance, or rough distance from here all the way down, as you've seen the orange marker, this is only very rough, because SB said he did zigzag in and out. Somewhere around here, 3.5 miles. That's just a rough estimate. Enough distance. I think they said it can take 3 to 4 hours to get from point A to point B, but it depends what speed you're walking at. As for SB, he's able to do it a bit faster. And in terms of physicality and health, all good there. But it does differ from person to person. Kenny Veach at the time, what was he like, 46, 47, 48? So it's younger, but with his pre-existing injuries, as we've heard of, one of his legs being damaged in the past, broken or blown out, bites as well by a snake, needed airlifted at one point, maybe consider him a bit vulnerable. And if he makes it harder for himself in the resources or the lack of it, and the weather at the time, any cold traps, there's a lot to take in mind, whether Kenny Veach was aware of it, whether he was pushing himself too much, or he knew exactly what he was doing. Either way, locations are very interesting considering how close by they are. You got a mine shaft here, and then you've got a supposed collapsed mine shaft. My question is, if it truly is one, could this have tunnels or network connections which could link on with this mine shaft here? Is that even possible? Whether it be Jeff Clark or the real Really Robin in the past, the discussions of this original mine shaft having tunnel ways now filled in, but at one point they would lead on to wherever in a certain direction. Could it link on up the hill to this spot here? The entrance and exit point. You never know. It would be interesting. As for how it goes up and down, well, that would seem quite interesting because look at that. It's not exactly equal. Not really, because it dips down and goes back up like a V shape, but still. Possibilities are endless. Now, with that being said, we need to have a closer look at the photos Looking at the first screenshot really stood out to me based off the colour contrast with what's laying about. You know, you look a bit further afar, the vegetation in the backdrop, to the left, to the right, and yet in the middle you got like a mound of dirt, a mound of rocks, stones, bits and bobs, what you probably normally associate with some kind of mining, some kind of soil disturbance activity, kind of like man-made, which has happened at some point in the past. But how far back does it date to? That's what's ultimately important, because if it dates back way before 2014 and it collapsed before that, then obviously Kenny Veach wouldn't have stood a chance. He wouldn't have been able to hide, conceal himself within it, intentionally or not. And we'll do a side-by-side to that later. Be sure to stick around so you find out what it looked like from 2024 to 2014 at the time of when Kenny Veach was about to go missing. Be sure to stick around for this video. Now, yeah, you got some dead wood on the ground, broken off, maybe like a branch, nothing significant there. We can zoom in just to check for any other details. Of course, anyone watching at any point in time, if you notice anything that stands out, unusual or odd, feel free to pause the video and leave a comment down below under this video, and we can always look back at it. The video that I did last night, one individual left a comment and a timestamp within my video pointing out there was a strange shaped object in the distance in the mountains, and I was able to see that myself. So it can be very helpful. Just like how SB says, if you notice anything, do a little video or point it out in the comments. It can lead to new ideas and opportunities in the future. So really, you see loose stones and rocks, which have come from somewhere, of course, and maybe broken away from a main source. When you get a bit further up this way, different coloured ones, tanned colour, almost a brownish. When you get a variety of different coloured rocks and a couple of bits of wood, more so planks. Didn't see any planks of wood though, which is kind of disappointing, but still, the different colours of rocks, mined minerals. I'm just trying to make comparisons to what you see at the Mineshaft, which Kenny Veach was at. You saw different types of rocks there, mounds. So there's some similarities, crossovers. Are they of the same age, period, time? Who knows? One may be older than the other. Vegetation growing on top of it, so some time has passed by. So the soil disturbance back then, ever since, enough time for vegetation to grow. I took that into consideration within the Dylan Rounds case, that early on in the search, if they were checking for an area of soil disturbance, well, if vegetation already started growing on top of it, then maybe it's not as fresh as you think, and it's actually more so in the past, before Dylan was killed and buried in the ground, right? The Dylan Rounds case, missing person up to a certain point in time, even though it was a true crime case, in terms of locating the body, finding a needle in a haystack in Lucin, Utah, the desert. Very flat land, easier to get across, but a lot to cover. Just like how it is here in this case, though it's more complex, this situation, because the terrain is a lot harder, it's further away, it's more desolate and demanding, much more. So you see that mound starts from there and curves around to about there. So that's interesting. It does definitely stand out, and this is probably what we see when looking down on the bird's eye view from Google Earth. And yet still, you got some lush vegetation back there. That big thick bush stands out too. And like how SB highlighted some of those trees along the way to the Mineshaft, the original one, how they just stand out in the middle of all the deadness and more dried vegetation. It's kind of interesting. But the next slide, when you get closer, you can see a more variety of different rocks. I mean, what I'd be looking for is planks of wood, boards, nails, things like that. It would indicate some kind of mine, whether it be a horizontal or a vertical mine shaft to take in consideration. Both can be filled in either way. Both can collapse. And if you're inside of it, whether it be on purpose or by accident, you can be trapped in there and you may never get out, especially in an area like this. In terms of search and rescue, Red Rock, would they have gone up this way? I think there might have been talks about going in the direction, but I don't know how much they actually searched and if there was any scent over this way. Didn't hear any reference. The problem is with the search and rescue, it's a bit tight-lipped. So because the case has gone cold, if they or others wanted to rely on some other people trying to solve the case or spread awareness, that lack of communication, that lack of cooperation, the Paiutes, if you want to call it that. Was it Indians or some natives, where they might keep their mouths shut as well because of certain reasons. It's just that breakdown in communication makes it a lot harder for others. And yet when it comes to Warlike Ref, when it comes to Jeff Clark, when it comes to SB Vega's adventures, when it comes to Jay Chuck and some others, clear, fairly easy communication, not too difficult, not too demanding, do it when you can, try your best, and it just goes a long way. Just as simple as SB Vega's adventures doing this video, an in-depth one, and allowing the footage to roll so you can take it all in. You can follow it from point A to point B. It was very helpful and a lot easier to understand. Now, with my experience with the maps, I kind of knew where we were at each point for most part of it, but for other people, it does go a long way. And then by adding on, you know, you can use bits of footage or you can use reference points, and if you find anything, leave comments. It all connects together. The more people that are involved for the right reasons, the more people that can help or share ideas, the better it can be. And I know it's a big contrast to the true crime cases, completely different, of course, where it's a complete shit show. But in terms of mysteries, and when there's many, you need many people as well. And whoever sees what, it could lead on to something. Now, in terms of the distance, not really much else going on, but, you know, the colours of these rocks stand out. Quite interesting. Different shapes, different sizes. Are they surface level rocks? Could they have been from deeper underground and were pulled out and brought to the side, which created that mound? Some big well, not boulders, but big rocks. Where about would the entrance or exit point be, the actual filling? I mean, this appears to be a mound where it's all collected. So where's the actual potential hole then? Would that be just a bit further on or around the sides? Well, before we get to that, oh yeah, this bit, because the ground is uneven, it dips down in some areas. I mean, the most interesting thing, look at those big rocks, really thick and probably very heavy. Surface level rocks or from deeper within? Looks like they've not been moved for a while. Kind of smooth the surface as well. Got to take in mind the weathering as well as time goes on. Even the mineshaft which Kenny Veach was at, that's worn away with time. The planks, the damage, it happens. Makes it a bit more unstable. Didn't see any rock cairns, no like symbols there or markers, just collections of loose rock building up. And then that vegetation, that is it sagebrush or so, that's where it dips down there, and that's where SB started speaking about, could this be the spot where it'd be used with dynamite to blast it, to cause that collapse? But would there have been any structuring? You know, like how the mineshaft which Kenny Veach stood near, because it's been vertical and it drops down, it descends. On the surface level, you got the planks of wood around the like perimeter, and then you got like the metal poles reinforcing it or so. And then it drops in with the ladder. Now, if it all imploded, exploded, and collapsed in on itself, it would still need a big covering of something to cover it all. In a situation like this, I don't see any metal rods. I don't see like those characteristics as you may with a vertical mineshaft unless it's fallen in on itself. I'm just thinking, when it came to the search for Susan Powell, when it involved Heavy D, the crew, maybe Alan, maybe Les or Scott Natal, some of those familiar names you may have heard of yourself. There's crossovers with other cases, even Dylan Rounds, which is interesting. But Les Natal, brother to Scott Natal, who was with Alan from Mountain Labs Fortress, working with Heavy D and the crew in Utah, I think it is, for Susan Powell, looking at a mineshaft, multiple bird nest going all the way down the vertical one, set on fire, and it all collapsed in on itself. And there's like blockages all the way down. So some of the key contents, what you would associate characteristics with a mineshaft of some sort, were within, not on the outside. So I don't know how noticeable it would be here, unless the key contents are buried underneath, and who knows what else. I mean, anyone watching right now, do you think Kenny Veach may be buried in this area for any reason? Do you think Kenny Veach may have just simply walked by this spot, went up the hill? Or did he just avoid it completely? I want to know your thoughts. Be sure to leave comments down below. But when we get to this one here, closer to the conifer, or the vegetation I should say, some odd-shaped rocks there. You know, one of the rocks looks more like a dog face in a way, side profile, but I know it's not a real dog, don't worry. Not much going on over there, really. Might be some clumps of rocks, though, in the bushes. It's kind of hard to tell. But it does dip down in this area, and that's where SB said it looks like someone's been digging in this area. If someone has been digging, that's kind of like the opposite of filling it in, isn't it? You know, like, let's say Kenny himself was to come here and somehow fell into it, or went into it and collapsed by him, or by accident, natural, couldn't get back out. Who would be digging, though, afterwards? Red Rock Search and Rescue? Other hikers and searchers in between? You know, what would be very interesting to document SB Vega's adventures if you're watching, after this video is done, depending on the reach it gets, because hopefully it does spread awareness, all in all, give credit to your channel, of course, but with giving the coordinates, it'll be interesting to see if there are any, you know, changes to the environment. Has anything been altered with? Maybe not just yet, but in the future, you never know, because things do change, especially the Mineshaft, on, off, and maybe it wasn't for sinister reasons, but still, there's some unknowns behind it and uncertainty. Would this be the next key hotspot, especially with it being not far away in parallel to the Mineshaft Kenny Veach stood near? Does make you think. But the way it dips down here, if it dips inwards, could that be the entrance, the fill-in point? And that the mound there is the collection what's been dug out from that hole. But then what's left to fill in the pre-existing hole then? Because I don't think you'd be using a shovel to bury yourself, very impractical, and I don't think you'd be in the mood to do that. So I want to know your thoughts. I mean, the only other thing I can mention is that when it comes to mines, maybe not a mine shaft, but like a horizontal mine, if you did see it, exploring abandoned mines in unusual places, the location was not given, which I know, it's very unfortunate. But nevertheless, going across the theme of burials or something being hidden, when just walking into the entranceway on the left-hand side, there was a clear mound of dirt of a slightly different colour, soil disturbance. Was it a grave? Was something buried there? Size of it was questionable. If someone was buried there, they'll be head inwards, standing up or upside down. You get what I'm saying? I don't think that would be practical there. But supposedly exploring abandoned mines is considering going back to the spot to dig it up and see what's there. Who knows? But I just wanted to add it in because it kind of just reminds me of the talk about mines, mine shafts being filled in, collapsing, Kenny being trapped inside or wanting to be so he won't be found. But then what can you do past that point? Ground penetrating radar, some kind of equipment that can locate dead bodies underground. I mean, with the Dylan Rounds case, it wasn't successful whatsoever. Yes, they did find Dylan Rounds' body in the end, but they had to rely on a confession from the killer. In this case, the only person that knows where Kenny is Kenny himself. But if you look at alternative perspectives and theories, you could say maybe some family members may know. If it's to do with Kenny being alive, let's just put it that way. But when looking back the way Steve hiked up, right, over that way in the distance, even though it's out of sight, would be going back up the hill towards the mineshaft which Kenny Veach was at. This part is on the west side, but we're actually looking east towards the mineshaft. But basically it's just when he pans down, because of the collection of dirt, rocks, rubble, as you can see, it builds, rolls all the way down there. A collection of it. You can see the colouring, it's like a pathway, a landing strip. And how would that have happened? Well, loose rocks rolling down a hill, it's pretty normal and gaining momentum. But furthermore, erosion with time. If rocks do break away in clumps and then roll off. And more importantly, for the gravel, for the dirt and any dust can be washed downhill, especially if it floods, if you get heavy rainfall. You think of those, I forgot what you call them. I forgot what you call those, like, not rivers, but it can fill with water at time and it collects and it can push it all down. A wash. And I believe that there are washes. I mean, is Pitcher Canyon a wash? Or kind of a wash? where it can fill up with water and it can cause erosion, but it can also move rubble, gravel onwards. So it may reveal something here, but it may cover something up elsewhere. And the only other comparison I can give to that is that when it comes to this area, which is over, Joe May Guzzler, one of the canyons which Jeff Clark finally found, the one that Robin did in the past, where it came across that weird tanned colour rock with the alleged M cave symbol in Hebrew translated to English as an M on the side face of the tanned rock, which turned out not to be the case. Actually debunked. One thing that didn't quite make sense was underneath it, where you see that gap. So you're looking at the centre of the screen. Underneath there's a fair gap, and there's not much about it. That slab of flat rock on the ground too, and other rocks nearby, you compare it to really Robin's original footage, and you can clearly see that there is, even though it's not quite clear, this is just a rough example, there are clumps of dirt, there's clumps of gravel by the sides filling up the gaps. Now where did they end up? Well, when you look there, it's pretty flat. Even the gravel nearby is quite flat and smooth. So rainfall washed it away, quite possibly. But as Jeff was panning around and looking further down from where he came up from the canyon, there wasn't enough of it built up or collected anywhere. So where did all that gravel go? Did someone get a shovel, put it into a bag, a wheelbarrow, transport it elsewhere? Obviously not. It would seem very impractical. But where else would it have gone? The exception with this being, well, you can see how it's spread out further on down. So it does indicate that there's been movement and impacted somewhat through the environment and weather with time. But in this case, with this particular canyon, it has left some people scratching their heads. So Jeff Clark, if you do want to add on with any thoughts, or if I did miss out any key details, you can always add on yourself in terms of how it looked. How that looks. And I know some people will say it's two different things, but believe me, it's the same location, it's just taken at different camera angles, that's all. You see that big slab of rock on top, same exact one there. This is just from a slightly diagonal profile of how it's taken. The main focus is hardly any gravel from the looks of it. Yeah, here you can see more grainy stuff, and there might be some previous photos as well which show it a bit clearer, but that was just a quick comparison on the spot. What we do need to do though is ultimately refer to the comparison, right? We've looked at the area up close, the possibilities of it being a mine shaft or once one. What's the chances though? It was open at the time when Kenny Veach was present. Well, what you see on screen is from 2014, October time, 1 month before he went back out there and disappeared. So it's not too much time apart, just 1 month difference. And whilst Kenny Veach was at the mineshaft panning the camera around, what you see bottom left corner of the screen, which you won't see on the other slide, that is the agave burn pit. Bottom left corner of the screen, that kind of like circular, light coloured thing, that's the agave burn pit. And in terms of the area of interest SB was looking at, was there in that area. And I know it's not that clear, but it's within that area. In terms of this one, this is from SB Vegas Adventures, almost the same. So slightly different angle, but once again, agave burn pit there, and then pointing over that way to the area being searched. And even just from that angle, it looks very steep, of course. So when comparing it, how different is it really besides the colour tone? Furthermore, as I told you earlier, that this area was kind of familiar with me looking in that direction with markers, because whilst Kenny Veach may have pointed over it himself in his video saying, oh, you go over that way on the other side of the mountains, that's where you come down Picture Canyon. Well, SB made a good reference point that Jay Silverheels mentioned about a femur bone being found. I can't remember if he found it himself or someone else did, but a femur bone was found somewhere up that part of the, do you call it a ravine area, up that hill area where that arrow is, roughly in that area. A femur bone up there, and yet you got collapsed mine shaft here. Well, you can't have a part of a dead body there and then buried there, unless somehow you were buried in that mine shaft, that vertical or horizontal one, filled in, and then somehow an animal scavenged, found one of your bones, picked it out somehow, burrowed in, and then decided to transport it over into that side of the hill and drop it nearby. But was it confirmed to be a human femur bone? I don't think so. or we would have heard more since. And furthermore, this isn't the only femur bone that was found originally in the past by, what's his name again? Gene Lukowski or Gene Luskowski, however you pronounce their name, whether they're real or a fake, supposedly exposed as a fake search and rescue member, but passed it on that at some point in the past of maybe 2021, a search was done near to where Kenny parked his vehicle, near to where SB parked his vehicle, in the 2024 hike, the recent one. A private search team looking for another missing individual out there, which sounds very weird when we only thought Kenny Veach was the only hiker out there. But a search was done down at another canyon, which at the start of Little Jermay Canyon, but not going up that way, more so going kind of east or southeast in a way up one of the canyons. I don't know if it's called Black Gate or Black Hill. I don't want to get mixed up with another one, which is elsewhere further on. But roughly, in the area, away from Little Jermay Canyon, and a femur bone found there, originally classified as a human one, then later ruled out to just be animal. Very weird times that, because even if that bone just ruled out, never mind. Are we saying that there's more than one missing hiker? It's not just Kenny Veach that's missing in Jermay Canyon or Pitcher Canyon, Sheep Range, Mojave Desert. There's other people out there, other hikers. Is that so? Do we have proof of it? Unfortunately, I've not seen it yet. Anyway, what you see now is almost a near perfect side-by-side comparison, focusing in on the coordinates. So on the side of that hill going up, where obviously you see the bushes, the light coloured area. On the left, KV mean Kenny Veach 2014 footage, October time. On the right, SB Vegas Adventures 2024 as of this month, I think, yes. And to be honest, yes, the colour tone looks different, but you got to understand the quality, video quality plays a role. The vegetation is almost kind of identical, to be honest. It's quite surprising, I'll be honest with you. Now, in fairness, when you look at it from here, it really looks like nothing. And yet when you're up close, right, because I say roughly in this area, yeah, and SB said absolutely, so that's all good. But when you look at it from a distance, from this angle, it looks like absolutely nothing. I don't see a mound, I don't see the logs, I don't see the bits and bobs, but when you're actually there, up close, it looks a lot different. Maybe you've used binoculars as well. You've got to think of the terrain, the quality, the visual aspect, but it really looks like nothing. So when you do compare it to this, because it looks the same, I don't see any darkness, I don't see any openings, I don't see any holes, but then again, we're not up close in the area. If we were up close, we'd be able to do a more fairer comparison. So all I can say at this moment in time, because they look identical to one another, and providing this is the exact spot, which SB did confirm previously, if it's the same, well then, it must mean it was filled in back in 2014 too. Now take into consideration, SB in his own video did acknowledge that it could be much older before Kenny's time, so maybe Kenny won't be there, but still, the theme of collapsed mine shafts, could Kenny Veach stumbled across one, or a cave? And I know there are alternative theories and alternative evidence to suggest or prove that Kenny is alive elsewhere, but as you know, got to look at it from different perspectives, got to keep up with the different angles, just in case one comes out with more evidence than the other. It's nice to be on top of it, so then you don't get lost or confused. That appears to be it for the screenshots there, but hopefully this side-by-side comparison makes it a bit clearer. You can obviously pause the video and look at it closer if it will help you. Who knows where this may end up next, but once again, new material has been added to a pre-existing theory. As a heads up, if you weren't aware, there is unfinished business within the area. In brief, there is more to come from SB Vegas Adventures, and it'll be interesting to see what's found next. Are we a step closer to Kenny Veach? I guess time will tell. For now though, I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.